who's going to help us break down this disaster class?
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, it was so tough we had to bring in our lead NFL analyst, the one and only Glenn Stretch Smith. We've also got Mike Leslie, who's at the home office in Waxahachie. All right, guys, so let's jump into this malady that is the Cowboys defense. And Coach, since you're the analyst, you get to go first. What bothered you most about that performance?
Watching the defensive line get absolutely knocked off of the football. And I'm not talking about 2 or 3 yards. I'm talking about 8 to 10 yards driven off the football. When you have to coach effort and physicality, you're coaching in the wrong business in football.
That's a great point. It is hard to watch them on skates, right? It's not supposed to be an all skate out there for the defense, but it felt like that, right? You know, it was unbelievable. Mike, what bothered you most?
Yeah, to Stretch's point, Kenny Clark was even the one who came out and said after Rico Dowdle's comments earlier this week that, hey, he's going to have to back it up. He's going to watch us on film and see the what did he see on film, Kenny? And what is everybody going to see on film after this one? I mean, it was bad.
What I was going to say, Mike, that's what bothered me most because, listen, and we talked about this on Sports Special, I know that NFL athletes don't pay attention to the bulletin board material like, you know, high school players or college players. However, it still doesn't change the fact that Rico Dowdle challenged you, you came back at him, and then you put that on tape. It's unbelievable. And I get it. It's noon start. It's the Cowboys. They're used to 3:25 starts. But we thought we had taken care of that hurdle with the way they played against the lowly Jets. But now we find out it's the same old song and dance we've seen from this franchise for far too long. They love to play down to their competition. Andrew?
Yeah, and that's the big thing to me was last week we were lauding them for getting over that kind of lull post-incredible tie versus the Packers. This was exactly the opposite. And part of it was a lack of aggressiveness. When you are the offense and you realize you have to be perfect every possible play, I thought, especially toward the end of the first half, I know I texted the group chat about this, you had 17 seconds left on the board. Every point matters. At least try for a field goal. You only have to get to the 50. You have a guy that has that kind of leg. Now, granted, it's a minor thing within the small context of the game. But as it turned out, those 3 points ended up swinging the whole thing. And instead of seeing Carolina walk down the field in 2 plays coming right out of the half and potentially tie the game, you basically gave them the lead in what ended up being a seesaw battle the rest of the way. And they were on the wrong end of it. And that's the main thing. It's just, you've seen killer instinct from them in a lot of games prior to this. They didn't have that today.
How much is Brandon Aubrey paying you for all this?
Nothing. He's Plano. That's all it is. Just repping the Wildcats. That's all it is.
No, listen, I think it's a good point. And I do think the point behind it is, if the special teams weren't so bad, I think if there was any kind of a return that could have been deemed a positive, I do think they would have went for points there, Andrew. And I think that's the takeaway, right? That special teams unit, especially the returners on this day, seriously needed help. It was not good at all. But let's back up to that defense, because here's the other issue I think we have to work through, Coach. And this is the hard part for me, right? Because we've seen this defense get exploited in every way possible now. We've seen the deep ball, teams going over the top. We have seen teams mix it up and march downhill. And today, we just saw them get the absolute football shoved down their throat with a running game. Where do you go? What do you say? How does Matt Eberflus begin to get traction from this unit?
I don't know that he can, Joe. You just went through it. I'll help you out with the Greek alphabet. You went the alpha to the omega. They've opened the middle up and let them run through the middle. Now they've let them run the football. They played with poor leverage. They played with poor hands. They played with poor feet. They played with poor eyes. I mean, I don't know how much more you can say. This has been a disaster for the defense. And to think about an offensive team that is the level that they're playing at and a defensive team that's at the level they're playing at, you wonder how these two even practice together.
Yeah, it sounds like the bank is broke. They're just playing too poor all around. Mike, when you look for positives out of that defense, I just don't think there are any.
No, because I think a couple of weeks ago, Brian Schottenheimer was trying to say, well, we're not that bad from a run defense perspective.
Right, yes.
And even at that point, I was inclined to ask, are you actually not that bad defending the run, or does nobody bother to run the football against you because they don't have to.
It's too easy against the pass.
And we have seen these last couple of weeks, because even last week against the Jets that couldn't do anything today against the Denver Broncos, the Jets ran the ball down the Cowboys' throat a week ago. And if Dallas wasn't able to create the big lead that they did last week, they probably would have been able to continue running the football like that last week, and it may have been a different football game if not for Breece Hall's fumble.
Yeah.
You can run the football against this team. You can pass the football against this team. You can do anything you want to against this Dallas Cowboys defense. We were joking about this before we started the show. The New Orleans Saints have a bad defense. They are giving up 26.7 points per game this year, 8th worst in the NFL. If the Cowboys merely had the New Orleans Saints defense, they'd be 4-2 or 5-1. But instead, they have a terrible defense.
First of all, thanks for that reminder about the New Orleans defense. But your point is very well taken, right? They don't even need middle of the road. They just need upper lower third, right? As opposed to the basement. And it's, that kind of leads us to the next point. And we will talk about this in the next segment. But what they're doing in terms of wasting some of the best play we've ever seen from Dak Prescott is borderline criminal, especially when you lay over all this the fact that when they shipped Micah Parsons out, they said because they wanted to be better against the run. That's what we were told. That's what the general manager said, right? We could scheme up and get pass rush, but we couldn't scheme up against the run. We need to be able to stop the run. Where was that today? Where was that today? And there's one other troubling thing that's going on right now, and it happened after this game, and we will talk about that next. We want to take a break here, but coming up, the thing that I found most troubling about what Cowboys players said afterward, and we will talk about Dak Prescott and that offense because we can't make it all gloom and doom. Keep it here. It's the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. All right, now let's get back to the bad stuff.
Right.
Because here's what bothered me most. After the game, it was Trayvon Diggs saying that, listen, we got to stop giving up all these points, and we're struggling doing all these different things. I don't think our defense has an identity. Well, unfortunately, he's not right about that because they do have an identity. They're one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL, right? But when he starts saying that kind of thing, Coach, it almost feels like it's a give up, and it almost feels like you're trying to blame coaches, and it feels like the beginning of finger pointing when we start hearing those kinds of phrases.
Well, that is what you're going to see. You're going to see guys that are frustrated with what's going on, the communication. They've blamed every single thing that's going on. And so, yeah, that is exactly what's happening here is there's a chance that you could see this thing implode. And if that happens, it's going to happen because nobody has confidence in what they're hearing in the meetings, and they don't have confidence in what they're putting out there on the film. Because guess what, Joe? That's in Sharpie. What you're putting out on film, it's not erasable. It's out there forever.
Yeah, and that's the scary part, right? Because we just, there was the panacea of the 5 sacks a week ago, right? But now we see what's really going on here, especially after the Jets had a total yardage of 82 yards today, I think. And it was it minus 10 yards passing when you figure it out?
Negative 10 net passing yards.
Minus 10 yards.
Unbelievable stuff. So, look, the Cowboys were functional against that, but it's just not going to be that way every week, Mike.
No, it is not. Glenn Stretch Smith had more passing yards than the New York Jets did today. Minus 10 passing yards. There's nothing. There's no thread to pull at. There's nothing to pull at. The only thing, as Andrew and I talked about on the postgame show, the only thing, if you're a Cowboys fan and you're looking for some positivity about this defense, it is the eventual return of DeMarvion Overshown. But that is still weeks away, and it's unfair to expect that he's just going to fix everything that's wrong with this defense. That's not going to happen. He might make it better, and heck, as we were talking about earlier, better might be all they need to be able to win some of these football games. But, yeah, no, there is no – Brian Schottenheimer did say after the game that he didn't think they were going to be pointing fingers, but moments later – right. Here comes Diggs with that comment. it's got potential to get really ugly really fast because you can't lose to a team like the Carolina Panthers. And when you do, it causes everybody to look either inward or elsewhere in the locker room. And it seems like there's less inward happening right now.
The other thing Schottenheimer said was that the team just needed to work on their consistency overall. I think the problem is they are consistent. Like this game in its fashion, we have seen now 5 weeks in a mixture of different ways. Mike and I were joking. It was about to be 37-37 again, heading to overtime if things shook out a specific way. And as we also kind of outlined, it's like, this is not fair to Dak in the season that he's having, and it's also not fair to Schottenheimer and the offense that he's calling in his first season at the helm. For Dak and them to try and get some easy passes that went backwards late in the fourth quarter with the game in the balance and the game was tied, and then to punt with about six and change left remaining, and know kind of internally it's like there's a chance they might not see the ball again, and then they didn't. That's the kind of stuff that they have to go out on the field and work against because they know everything has to be perfect. There is no wiggle room. You have to score on every possession, Joe.
And unfortunately, we saw this coming. We've been saying this for weeks. Dak's got to be perfect. You got to score more than 30 points. You might have to score more than 40 points. These are all things, unfortunately, that we've seen and that we've shown, and it's a shame, right? Because Dak Prescott just had his third straight week of at least 3 touchdown passes and at least 120 QB rating. He is just playing off the charts. And today he didn't even have a running game because Javonte Williams only had 29 yards. So you have the most important position on the field playing at a premium, playing at one of the highest levels in the league right now, and you put up a putrid performance. I mean, that's really tough to take. And listen, you could almost tell, and I don't know if you guys kind of were looking at it this way, I feel like it's even, the defense is even changing the way that Schotty's calling the game because, Andrew, you mentioned the fact that he's not as aggressive as you might like. And it might be, hey, listen, we need to possess the ball because if I do throw it up and throw that deep ball to Pickens that we were all waiting for and we score too quickly, well, then that defense trots back out on the field and you know what's going to happen then. So I felt like he was even trying to slow play the offense. So unfortunately, the struggles have become pervasive, Coach. And I do have one thing, one thread we could pull. Cowboys fans, I know it was a tough day looking at that defense, but I will say this. When George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb are on the field together, bro, this should be an absolute blast. Coach, what do you think?
No, I think absolutely you're going to continue to see them try to press the ball. They got to score 40 now. I mean, it really is. That's the realistic side of it. It's kind of like the realistic side of me looking at Mike Leslie. He looks like he's fixing to take off in that SpaceX tomorrow morning with that headset on.
Okay.
I didn't know where he was going with that.
I didn't either, but we're unnecessary roughing on Coach. That was unnecessary roughness with that comment. The headset's fine, Mike. It looks fine. You're good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
He needs a box, though, to stand next to Coach. That's all I'm going to say.
After that penalty, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back.